on annexation and zone change 1401, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None were opposed. All those abstaining? None were abstaining. Okay. Next one we have zone change and annexation 1402. Were there any concerns or comments about the written findings that have been put before us?
No.
I looked at it and it looked like it matched up to the good summary of what we had changed or discussed in addition to what staff had already presented.
Yes. And I would move that we approve the annexation ZC 1402. Is that right? 1402?
Yes, 02.
02.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None were opposed. All those abstaining? None were abstaining. Okay, we have new business before us, which is the application for a minor modification for the sidewalk location along Northwest 10th Avenue for Northwood Estates Phase 2, which is application MOD 1401. First question I have for staff on this is, was this noticed?
It didn't need to be. It's considered a minor modification in the code. Doesn't require notification for minor modifications. In fact, I could approve this myself, but I didn't feel comfortable doing that. So in past practice, we've had this item called new business on the agenda, and this is how we've used it in the past for many years, is kicking it up from my decision-making authority, just placing it on the Planning Commission agenda so that you guys, and the reason is that you guys were the ones that approved this subdivision, and you specifically approved it with planter strips, whether you knew that or not. And it was actually discussed several times with the applicant through the process, and for whatever reason he failed to make changes in the plans that reflected what he really planned on doing until this moment. Staff has let his arguments stand on their own, and we don't have any heartache really in it, because there are no swales. Low impact development swales is one of the reasons they were originally designed that way back in 2001 with the master plan. But things have changed now, and they don't really need them for that purpose. And then he's thought of several other reasons why it would be advantageous not to have them. One of his primary arguments is kind of this, it's in an existing area surrounded by developed subdivisions and streets and such, that 10th really doesn't have sidewalks, and hardly any of it, and we've been working on sidewalks for many, many, many years, and it's very difficult to get property owners to give easements on their property to install a new public sidewalk. And so if we're ever successful in getting all the easements we need, those sidewalks are going to be curb tight on the rest of 10th Avenue to the east, and the 2 lots to the west to Birch, or 1 lot. There's only 1 lot there that will bring Northwoods all the way over to Birch. And so if we make those connections either direction, they will be 2 curb-tight sidewalks. We know that for certain. You can always transition sidewalks from curb-tight to what's newly planned, And our new ordinances and street sections do indicate that our preference is for planter strips. We did not do that internally to Northwoods because they were directly matching up with Phase 1, which were curb tight. And we actually argued when we approved this subdivision that, well, even though we're giving you curb tight in the entire rest of your subdivision, 10th Avenue is kind of separated. And hey, here's a spot where we could go to our new regulations, which generally ask for planter strips. And we do have many new subdivisions that have planter strips. All the ones down in your neighborhood, they have planter strips. Some of the newer ones down there and such. But this one will connect to curb tight.
So we'll connect to curb tight, so it would be more of an anomaly than...
That argument has been used that if you're looking up and down 10th, you're going to see curb tight go out and then back to curb tight. And plus, there's also overhead electric lines on the north side and the poles. They could not bury those. It was just too expensive because they're high-powered lines. And I'm not 100% sure that I've seen exactly how the engineering plans are going to deal with those poles. I was arguing that they might end up being in the sidewalk, but the developer has assured us that he's going to still weave them slightly so that the poles are not in the sidewalk.
Frank, can you point me or show me in where in the code that it talks about these minor modifications,
Yeah,
so I can take a look at it? Because I'm not entirely sure that I feel like we should be doing this under new
There's
business
two
without public
places.
hearing.
First, if you look at 1689, the second page, there's a table, 1689.020, and it has listed in it, halfway down, what it calls types of applications. It has modifications. And it tells you to refer to 1689.090, and that's where you'll find the minor modification provision.
Sorry, I was just catching up with you. Can you repeat the last part of that?
So it's 16.89.090 is where modifications are,
Okay.
and then it's A for minor modifications. And it says that you process it as a type 1 process, which doesn't require any notification.
Okay.
And I would normally be making these decisions just kind of on the fly as a minor thing, because minor things do come up all the time that we're handling, and you guys never know about any of them. This one here was important enough to me that I didn't want to make the decision.
So then, if you're saying we kick it to B, then, which
Well,
is intermediate modification.
no, we don't kick it to B, but there's another provision in the code that says wherever the planning director has the ability to approve these things, I'm trying to think where that is now, I can always kick it up to the planning commission if I don't feel comfortable making that decision. I'm not sure where that is right now.
Well, to me, it says here, intermediate modifications are those that do not fit in the definitions of A or C, which is if it's not a minor modification.
Well, I'm saying it is a minor modification. I mean, that's the determination I made, that it's a minor modification. And those are by, if you look back in the code, the same section at the beginning, it says type 1 processes are approved administratively by the planning director. And I don't know where it is now, but it says that I can kick those decisions up to you if I don't feel comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I usually don't feel comfortable when I know that it was some item that was discussed. And not sure, don't want you guys to be surprised when you see something that might not be what you thought it was going to be. Because the plans that were submitted clearly showed planter strips.
Is this gentleman here, are you here on this matter, sir? Okay. Well then, before we take any kind of action, I'd like to hear from this gentleman. Sir, would you like to come up, or do you want to make
I'm not
some?
to testify, I just, Kurt would have to go.
Okay.
I expected him to be here tonight, but he couldn't make it tonight.
I couldn't address it any better than what he's done in his letter, so that's why I didn't prepare anything else.
I don't necessarily have, any real objection to the substance of what he's asking, but I do know, to me, if it doesn't, if Brian had said, and I respect Brian's opinion greatly, that this was maybe a more important change than what he felt comfortable doing on his own, that means that maybe it's not quite so minor and that it should be intermediate, which doesn't really change a whole lot, except for that when we review modification, we do it and people still get noticed, but it's afterwards. But that the last part, the modification criteria, D, is that shall be evaluated based on the criteria pertaining to the original application being modified. Since we don't have a staff report, I didn't bring my notes on this particular prior application. I'm almost inclined that we table this to the next meeting. The gentleman can have his engineer be here. I certainly want to be in my notes to just compare any changes they're making to the original criteria to make sure it all still matches up and would comply with the original approval. Is there any thoughts on that?
I would agree with that.
I think that's a good idea, Joe.
That would be on the next month on the...
The next meeting is July
July 14th.
15th.
Yeah, it's new business, so anything we table comes up automatically in old business.
I'm not defending, I'm just telling you a fact that I was told when this application was made, is that the applicant plans on pouring the curbs that would, well, I guess it wouldn't set that. He will be pouring the curbs this week, but that doesn't really set where the sidewalk.
Right, because they'd have to be.
Yeah.
If you're the applicant's representative, do you have any objection to that, to us tabling it from that? Okay.
And so the reason is to provide notice?
No.
Because
no.
we talked about doing that, and I finally said, well, I think it qualifies as a minor change.
Well, I agree, and
just
even
don't
if
wanna
it's
make it-
intermediate, it's noticed afterwards, after the decision, with the chance to appeal it, so
Okay.
it doesn't have to be pre-noticed. So, just so we can have our packets and have the information that was, as it says in D, evaluated based on the criteria pertaining to the original application.
So you're really looking for,
I'm
I'm trying to think what we're going to bring to you. I mean, are we going to bring you all of the paperwork that went into approving that subdivision? Or are we going to sort through and try to find if there's anything in all of that that showed or discussed planter strips on 10th?
I think we'll want the staff report and findings so that we can see if, I don't remember specifically what our findings were, if they had, on any of the approval criteria they had to do with, specifically.
And they may not have specifically itemized this out, but the drawings certainly showed planter strips.
Yeah, if it had no bearing on our decision, then there probably wouldn't be any reason to object to the minor changes, in my opinion, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
We can do that.
So we just look at it so that we've got that material in front of us. Okay, so I'll make the motion that we table it, that particular one, which will be old business for the next meeting.
Yep, I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
No.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All four were in aye. Any opposed? None were opposed. Any abstained? None abstained. Thank you. Sorry for hopefully you enjoyed our later meeting.
I don't blame you, but you should have been here, but that's the way it is.
That's happened. I just understand. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then, any other items of interest from staff?
I don't think so.
14th. You may be in charge of the 14th there, sir.
Oh, boy.
I think I'm gone then. I'm gone on that day.
I know Laney's gone from our side. I think.
Yes. Hiding the shores of Lake Michigan.
Well, and Angie will be gone if she's early, so. 2 weeks early.
Yes, I will be gone on the 14th.
And what day is the meeting after the 14th?
28th.
I won't be here then.
Okay.
28th I'll be gone.
Okay. 14th it is. Got it down.
All right.
Monday. It might not be Monday. Might be August.
Okay. The only thing, Brian, I wanted to ask. I guess
I don't think we currently have, I mean, it could happen, but not likely. I don't think we currently have an application for that agenda, the next. So we'd be doing the findings from today's meeting and the continued sidewalk planter strip issue, I believe.
Okay. Brian, can you maybe help me brainstorm? I'd like to potentially address either council or the mayor or somebody about this street tree ordinance. We've had it face us a couple of times now on these new subdivisions and had some trouble reconciling that ordinance with what their developers seem to want to do. And I'm not sure how we as a planning commission can address that.
I'm kind of lost on what it is you're confused about or what you think there's been a trouble with, because I haven't seen it, so you're going to have to explain it.
Well,
more
trees
to
would
me.
be required on ivy, right? There's no exemptions that I'm aware of under the street tree ordinance.
I think the only thing in the street tree ordinance that talks about, it does talk about arterial streets being different than the other classifications of streets, but I think it has to do with the fact of maintenance for them. I think it actually says if street trees go in on the arterial streets, then the city, now maybe it says the city will be responsible for the maintenance of those trees if there's a wall involved. If there's not a wall, then I don't think there was a difference, but I think there is that difference within there. But yeah, I guess I haven't really thought of it in terms of whether you do them or not, because arterial streets are different. And so I don't think any question has come up internally to a subdivision that they do street trees, and there's never been a question. But when you're adjacent to an arterial street, they're kind of a different animal. And I'm not sure the ordinance says anything specific about that, but you can't always deal with it well. Or if you do, it's going to get pretty difficult, because the way you deal with it is you get a whole lot more right-of-way than exists, and that gets really controversial. And so that may be what you're addressing, is because that came up and does come up, and both of the last subdivisions. We managed to solve the one by getting easements on private property rather than more right-of-way. And so it was a kind of compromised position rather than requiring right-of-way.
I myself am a proponent of the street trees if they're judiciously placed. But just to, I think nothing looks uglier than to have a nice, beautiful, what would have been a full tree that has been hacked down, had the crown cut out of it because the power lines run through. So you end up with a big U in the top of the tree. So I think we need to have some common sense applied to where we're putting these, not just mandating that. Of course, with the street tree ordinance now, it's going to regulate a little closer what type of trees can be used, which could affect that situation where...
Supposedly, the new street tree ordinance didn't change anything regarding this topic. And so the old one was just the same with regard to this issue. I believe it is an issue, but it's not as a result of the new tree ordinance.
Oh, okay.
It's always been this issue as to whether you get... The same thing happened on Northwoods Phase 1 along Territorial. No street trees were planted because the ordinance basically at that point said 1 tree for every lot frontage internally. It didn't say internally, but that's how it was interpreted.
Well, let's just do this. Can you
So-
print out the actual ordinance and maybe give us a 5-minute, just
Okay.
a little quick report so we can understand if we need to be applying this thing or
Sure.
not?
I mean, if
And
that's the issue
I'll put
now.
my brakes on so that we know.
I know what the issue is now. It's basically, I really think it's the arterial streets is where we're having.
I just
that
want to make
issue.
sure if it applies, we're applying it. If it doesn't, we're not.
Okay.
And I guess I could go on the website and read it, but not be peruse city code unless I'm doing actual work for the city. Okay. Any other commissioner items for staff?
Nope.
Discussion topics?
Mr. Chair, I propose that we adjourn.
Okay, no more items on the business. We are adjourned.